everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of the Bulletproof Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dogu. My guest today is Sapna Malhotra. Sapna is an international management consultant that has over 2 decades in the consulting sector. She's consulted with companies in the technology, financial services, and telecommunications industries. She started her career out in Accenture, and from there she grew to consult with other companies until she now runs her own consulting business. She teaches a part-time course on international management consultancy at the George Brown College in Toronto. She's the author of the new book titled Connect the Dots: Turn Strangers into Meaningful Network Relationship. And she's also the host of Can Innovate Podcast, a podcast focusing on Canadian innovators. I'm pleased to have Sapna on the show today to tell us a little bit more about herself, her experience as a management consultant, the new book, Connect the Dots, and of course, anything else she has going on that she's willing to share. So with that said, Sapna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Chi. I am so honored to be here. And honestly, I got to give you kudos and props because as a fellow podcaster, I know how much work and effort you put into this. And honestly, it's dynamic. Really fantastic.
Thank you so much, Sapna. Thank you. Appreciate that. So, Sapna, let's get into it. You have a very varied career here. And I want to, because this show is focused on people that are early stage in their career, I want to talk a little bit about some of those early stages of building your career in management consulting, and then we now get into your new book, Connect the Dots. So walk us to where it all started and how you got into management consulting.
Yeah, so I actually started off at, not to age myself, I started off at Anderson Consulting, and then it became a public company. It was called Accenture at that time. So I started there, and I actually started as a financial analyst, and I was doing a lot of tax returns. I'm actually a CPA, an accountant. So numbers and money have always made sense to me. And I used to actually help with a lot of the partners with their tax returns. And I actually developed a really great relationship with a lot of the partners, and they saw that I had a really interesting background. And I guess I was kind of intriguing to them because I was able to explain financial terms easy to people with no financial background. And then they brought me into consulting because we were doing a lot of work in the financial services sector. And that's kind of how it blossomed. So everything I've done has been truly by accident and just having really smart people around me.
Awesome. So you spent those years, formulating or learning the management consulting skills in Anderson, and then you went into it became Accenture, correct? Yeah. And then you worked with different companies before you now started your own shop. So tell me a little bit more about some of the skills you learned as a management consultant and how were you able to apply that for other businesses that were not necessarily consulting specific?
Yeah. So honestly, Accenture was so great because it really taught me, and the partners are phenomenal because yes, we were delivering amazing systems and technology solutions, but they really had taught us about the importance of relationships. They taught us the importance of communication. They taught us the importance of stakeholder management. And these words are buzzwords, but there's actually an art to it. So instead of just checking the box, there's really an art form to it. And those basic principles have really allowed me to really grow. So then after I left Accenture, I joined Rogers. And Rogers, I was actually setting up a sales and marketing distribution type of platform where we're automating a lot of the sales compensation. Now, they didn't want me to come in because I was taking away power from the salespeople, right? They've always had control to, give whatever payments. But again, because I understood how to build the relationships and actually manage the stakeholders and the risks and all those things, they actually took me into their world, and I was able to really make change happen, and that they were the actual champions of it, that they were the ones going, yes, this is a great system. It's really going to be great. And so on, because I was able to add more value. And then when I decided to move to England and I joined Amdocs UK, that is a crazy company because they have so many different cultures and clients around the world. And then learning about how the cultural differences in order to make change, because it's not a cookie cutter model. Yeah. So in Asia, everyone would say, yes, ma'am, and then I would get something totally different, right? And then versus North America, where they wanted it yesterday. And then in South America, before anyone did business with me, I had to have dinners, lunches, coffees, and get invited to the family barbecue. And then I could do business with them. There's such different
Wow.
cultural differences
Mhm.
in a lot of places. And being able to actually spend the time to get to know them and understand their communication styles. What are the words they are most comfortable and familiar with? Understanding if they are a risk type of person or if they are a benefits type of person. I was able to cater my communication and build those relationships with everybody. And that's really kind of the essence that I think people keep forgetting, that it's relationships is not like Netflix. It's not like you could turn it on and turn it off, right? Like,
Yeah.
it is something you have to build over time. And just like any marketer will tell you, you got to go through the phase of getting to know people so they can get to like you and then trust you. And it doesn't happen overnight.
Very true. Very true. So how does that experience now fold back into you writing the book? Because I know as a management consultant, I was a management consultant as well. What you just said is so true, that you learn stakeholder management and engagement, relationship building skills, because you're trying to win work. So that means sometimes you might just have to go out drinking and just hanging out with the client, in as much as you feel like, oh man, I just want to crawl into bed and just watch TV and not talk to anybody. So you building these skills, these soft skills and these hard analytical skills all across the globe, learning about different cultures and management styles. How does that now create your perspective when you were writing the book, to say, hey, who am I writing this book for, and what do I want them to learn based on my 20 plus years of experience?
So it's so funny that you asked that. Again, it was by accident, because George Brown invited me to become a part-time professor to teach their consulting one-on-one class. And originally I had gone in there too because they wanted to understand, what management consulting is and what it's not. And I actually thought I scared all the students by giving them the dark side of consulting, because even though it's a really lucrative career, it is a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that there's times I had to pull in, overnights, hours, working around the clock. And, it's crazy how much work we do because the expectation is so high. So when George Brown invited me to teach the consulting 101, and I started teaching these students, and these students are not like young students. These guys are between the ages of 25 to 50. This is kind of a post-grad type of diploma that they're working on.
Okay. So they're mature students.
Mature students. And then what they were asking were all these questions about networking and the challenges they had. They couldn't find a job. They couldn't deal with the relationship that they were having, that they were with their boss, or they couldn't make an impact and they couldn't get promoted. And there was all this frustrations. So I started giving them different types of, curriculum and advice, and it totally shaped a different direction. So after one semester, every class was about networking and building relationships and, how can they make an impact and really do that. The book ended up writing itself. From questions of, I've got an accent, I don't feel comfortable. Or, I'm shy and I'm an introvert, so I don't like being out there. Or I keep going to all the worst networking events and I don't meet anyone interesting. Or I get a business card. Now what do I do?
Yeah.
And they're such relevant questions. And, so we started to help. And that's exactly how the book came about, was based on them. And that's why the book's dedicated to them.
Yeah. And even another one that I didn't hear you mention was basically, okay, you go to a networking event and you connect tons of business cards, maybe from a conference or whatever. By the time you come back, you try to reach out. Okay, you reach out once and then boom, nothing. What do you do with that? How do you follow up? How do you build that relationship? Those are part of the things that are big challenges. I remember myself many years ago when I was in grad school, they would tell you, go to networking events, go network, go find a job. I don't think I can count on one hand the amount of friends that got a job going to networking events. It was just basically either they knew people from prior work or prior life, or they were just basically applying online and they found a job. So I think this networking thing is a real skill that needs to be mastered well, so that at least you can use it to your own benefit and advantage, and not use it like, okay, I need to get something from this person, but I need to, like you said in your book, it's a win-win. You give value so that the person can be reciprocative to give you value in the future.
Yeah, it's crazy. To your point, yes, you get business cards. So here's a quick little synopsis before I'll give you that golden nugget. All of my jobs that I've ever gotten outside of Accenture, because they recruited me, Rogers, Amdocs, and all of my clients since I've gone independent have.
Hello? Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You dropped off for a minute there.
Yeah, Skype is tricky that way.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I'll start again.
Yeah.
So I definitely, that's a great question, Chi, and I'm going to tell you all the secret nuggets about it. But I'll tell you something, that all of my jobs I've had outside of Accenture, because they recruited me, my Rogers, Amdocs, and all of my clients that I have since I've been independent have all been through referrals and networking. And 85% of jobs and roles and contracts are not posted anywhere. So you're then playing with a different algorithm of playing with something that 15% of everybody that can see that's being posted, and you're competing with them. The odds are not great, right? Like they really are kind of stacked against you. And, I remember reading a book like, I'm going to say a decade ago, and it always said, if you have to go through a recruitment or through HR or something like that, you've already lost the game, right? Because that's most of the jobs aren't there, and you're playing against the current. What you need to do is start to kind of play a little differently. That you're like, hey, wait a minute, you're building the relationships, and the relationships really matter because people refer people into companies that they know that they like and they're going to trust. That's not going to make them look bad or blemish their internal branding or anything like that, right? So it adds to that whole value piece. Now, in terms of collecting business cards, I get it. And one of the things I really, really try to do is that when I talk to somebody, I find out as much as I can about them. I'm so curious about them, what they're up to, what their goals are. I ask them so many questions about them. So then I know how to follow up with them afterwards. So I can say, hey, you know what? I saw this article that, we were talking about. I just want to make sure I followed it through. I really enjoyed our conversation. We didn't get a chance to talk more. Any chance you're free for a cup of coffee? Or are you going to be in the city anytime soon? Or are you going to be attending this event? And because I gave them something that I heard that they needed or could potentially be useful, they open it up and they connect with me. They're like, oh my gosh, it was so great. When can we, meet up? Yeah. But the other thing is, I don't wait 2 weeks to follow up. If I'm at a 5-day event, I am pulsating and taking a step in the first day to go and write down all my notes, my next steps, my plan of action, and I actually debrief those things, and then I actually execute it right away. Because I can never remember what I had for breakfast 2 days ago. So they are not going to remember me 2 days later. Yeah. So I do it right away. Right away.
Very true. Very true. So now, what are some of the most common barriers to networking in writing this book, as well as in your experience, and how can we overcome them?
Well, a big one is that people think that being an introvert is a disadvantage. Yeah. And they're like, I'm too shy, I'm too this. You know what? It's actually a great thing that you're an introvert. So connection and human connection is actually decreasing, as we know. Loneliness is on the rise because people don't actually actively hear each other anymore. So an introvert automatically wins because they actually actively, deeply listen to somebody. So they could say one thing and the person could talk for 30 minutes and they will be remembered that was the best conversation that they had. Just because someone took the time just to hear them. I know, it's crazy, right? You could barely say anything and be told that you're the best conversationalist in the world.
That was great for me. Okay, what are some other ones?
So some other ones is that, people get stumbled on when they introduce themselves, right? Like they'll come out or someone will ask them, what do you do? And it's like, boom, there's the problem. They start rhyming off their CV and all my eyes get rolled. And it's not like it's a question that we don't know that's coming, right? Like it's the natural question. But yet we just don't take the time to frame ourselves. And it's not about an elevator pitch. It's about what is the experience you want to leave them with. So for example, when people ask me, what do you do? First of all, unless you're a management consultant, no one understands what management consultant is.
Yeah.
Like my friends call me Chandler because they have no clue what I do. So I don't know if you know Chandler from Friends.
Yeah.
No one knows what he actually did. So that's what I got coined as. So when I talk to people and they, that are not from the consulting world, I actually say, you know what? I actually I teach people business life skills. I'm a podcaster, an author, and honestly, I'm obsessed with Gordon Ramsay. And it's so short and sweet. And I pause because people also underestimate the value of a good pause. They have to take time to digest what you just said because it was so short, sweet, and concise, and they didn't have to work hard for it. And most times, 9 out of 10 times, someone will be like, why are you obsessed with Gordon Ramsay? He speaks this way. You like that? Or he's just a marketing genius. And they get really kind of curious about that. And it becomes an icebreaker because I share them something a little bit personal about myself.
Yeah.
And, it's amazing. Like I have now connected more people around food than they have my skills. And then they get to know me a little bit more of what else can I do because I became likable right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
And that's something else. We just don't take the time to be more of ourselves and authentic. We're too busy thinking about how we need to be, perceived and what's the right words. And we get nervous about that as opposed to just being ourselves and showing the quirky side, right? Just show them a little glimpse of you.
Yeah. Makes sense. So now, as you mentioned that, it got me thinking, you said something personal with Gordon Ramsay, and then you're also a podcaster, so you're naturally networking and meeting people. Now, in terms of your podcasting experience and career, has that added any additional flavor to your networking skill set?
Totally. Podcasting has been a great way to meet new people and really open that up. But the second thing is the stories that I get to tell from all the podcast interviews and the fact that I can put cannabis and this food and this other farming industry and go, oh, can you imagine if this happened? Like I've become that much more innovative because I've actually been able to hear so many other people's stories and journeys. Yeah. It's been mind-blowing. Like I already know my second, third, and fourth book already, and I am just trying to prioritize which one to go next because I have so many ideas. And and I'm already a curious person to begin with, and I love learning so much. And these people teach me so much every episode. I mean, I'm sure you find that too.
Yes, I do. But I was just thinking about it because I know if you're in a classroom situation and you get that question of, oh, I'm an introvert, I don't know how to talk to people, I don't know how to network. I think podcasting is one of the best ways to actually overcome that fear of talking to a stranger and just getting to know people, because you prepare upfront, you have the person captive for 30 minutes, 1 hour, whatever it is, and then you start asking questions. And after a while, if you just stick to your script, you find that your conversation is not going to be memorable and enduring. But when you start thinking, okay, where's this person coming from? What's the goal of this podcast? What's the goal of this person? How can I enrich myself? When you have 3-4 different goals you're trying to bring out, it makes you think, okay, you know what, if we're trying to do all this, I need to be efficient enough where if I ask this one question, it can meet the need of the listener, it can meet my need because I learned something too, and it will meet her need because it positions Sapna as an expert and she's able to share her story and her understanding in a deeper and clearer way that tells the audience that, wow, this is somebody that we should really hire and bring into our business. Have you ever applied that or told your students to do a podcasting capstone project or something?
Some of them actually tried to do some of it, and they just found it really nerve-wracking. And the issue is that they weren't confident in the questions they wanted to ask. And what I kept saying is, guys, you got to think about what it is that you're trying to get out of it. Like, what are you curious about? And the fact that they weren't at that level of curious about the individual, then it was a script that they were reading, right? It's just like a telemarketer calling you and you know what they're going to say, right? And that's what I was saying with them. Like, when you do these types of activities, You get to learn, and you learn to ask better questions. And it comes with experience. And on top of that, because I've always worked with C-level executives, right? Like, you ask one question, they'll give you an answer. But then when you ask the second question, because you open up the onion, that's when you start to really see what's kind of really going underneath, the soil in the organization and so on. But you need to have that ability to ask questions and do that research beforehand.
Yeah.
And it's really relevant in all of those areas. And nobody does that level of due diligence. Everyone's too busy. They think volume trumps quality.
Yeah.
And I keep saying, no, I could have done a 5-day or 7-day a week podcast, but I wasn't going to put enough quality into it. And quality is more important to me than just volume.
Yeah, very true. Very, very true. And I read a bunch of the case studies in the book, but one thing that stuck out to me was when you were talking about, the nonverbal side of networking. So being approachable, body language and all that stuff. Could you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, totally. It's amazing how much we forget about our body language. My dad is going to one day he's going to laugh at me when he finds out all the stories I've actually told about him. When I was growing up, and by the way, guys, I'm actually, for all the listeners out there, I am Indian, British Canadian Indian. So I am not Chinese or Asian of any descent. But when I was coming home from school, my dad was always watching Asian TV. He loved watching all of those dramas that were either in Cantonese or Mandarin and everything else. And there was no subtitles.
Really?
None. And I would say to my dad, how are you watching this? And he says, I really enjoy it. It's really good. And I said, but how do you understand anything? And he says, you could totally tell by the body language. You could totally tell by the tone of their voice. And I was like, oh my gosh. And he goes, and you know what? A lot of these Kung Fu movies are just like Indian Bollywood movies, except there's no dancing, there's Kung Fu, and I like that better. But he was right? We can always tell what people are saying or doing just by their body language and what they're doing and whether they're making eye contact. So, for example, when you go to a restaurant, when you look around the room, find a couple or just two people or a group of people and guess what they're up to or guess their relationship.
Yes, I've done that before.
Right? You don't have to hear anything, but you can tell by their gestures.
Yes, you can tell who's on the first date and who's been together for a long time. Yes, you're totally right.
It's amazing that we forget. So, being that we observe that, are we aware of what body language we're holding when we're talking to people? Are we coming across as defensive? Are we coming across as open? My favorite is when people go to a networking event and they bring a wingman, but they actually bring 20 and they all stand in a corner together and they don't allow anyone to come into that circle. They're laughing with themselves, right? But you're at a networking event. Didn't you want to meet new people? But you're definitely making it, I'm not coming over. And I'm an extrovert and I don't want to go over to break that, closeness. So it makes you kind of stop and think about, hey, let's go back to the basics, right? Let's remember how much of our nonverbal cues we're giving out there. Are we not smiling? Are we not making eye contact? There was this guy that I followed on Instagram for quite some time. And honestly, I was so excited to finally meet him because I really found him endearing. And honestly, when I met him finally, he didn't make any eye contact with me. So I thought, oh, I've done something to him. And then later on that event, a couple of people and I were talking and they're like, yeah, he didn't talk to any of us. He didn't make eye contact. So I was happy it wasn't just me, but it was all of us. But the worst thing is that all of a sudden, even though we enjoyed his content that he had created on Instagram, we no longer trusted it because he couldn't connect with us in real life.
True. Very true. Yes. And I think I remember reading, I think it's Bill Clinton's biography or something, where the author was talking about how everybody that meets with Clinton always feels like, oh, he's their special friend because he has a way where when he shakes you and he looks deeply into your eye, and even if he's saying, oh, how are you doing or something, you feel like you're the only person in the room or something. But there's a way that he just looks into your eyes like he genuinely wants to know what's going on with you that makes you feel, oh, wow, I really like and I really trust this person.
Oh, yeah. I could totally imagine that. Because, again, when people actually and this goes back to mindfulness too, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you just actually spend 2 minutes in the moment with that actual person, making eye contact, smiling, nodding your head gently, you feel warm and
Mm-hmm.
welcome, right? Like they make you feel like you want to stick around, that you're not unwelcome. And that's a huge difference. Like it makes a big difference. And yet I've been to so many places, people's heads are down on the phone. They barely make eye contact. They don't even smile. And I'm like, okay, nice to meet you too. I'm out of here because I don't want to talk to you either, right?
Yeah, true. Now, there was another chapter in the book where you compared networking to dating, and you also talked about interviewing a dating coach. So let's break it down for the people that are listening to show the similarities and the differences and what you took out from that experience in the dating world and how people can apply that in networking for business or for career advancement purposes.
Yeah, a lot of people have asked me, they're like, couldn't believe that I actually interviewed a celebrity matchmaker to talk about this, because here's the truth of the matter. Just like dating, we only have, 7 seconds to make a great first impression?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to ask the guru herself, how do I do that? Like, how do I make that impression? And she was telling me such interesting stories. So for example, people that go to any type of social event, and if they are dressed inappropriately, they tend to focus so much inwards on themselves because they already feel even more uncomfortable. Right? And it makes a difference, right? Like if you turn up to a black tie event in jeans, you're going to be so embarrassed the entire time that you didn't dress appropriately that you forget about everything else or making the most out of it. You've already displaced yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things is she's like, definitely take a bit of time to think about, what is the image that you want to project? Like, if you're going on a date, you maybe want to dress a little bit more sexy. Where if you're going to a network event, you want to dress more professional. And here's the funny part. I don't know how many networking events you've been to, but I've seen so many people with ripped jeans, unironed clothes, stains on their shirts. And I don't want to talk about garlic or bad breath.
Yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable, right? And these types of things are kind of like, wait a minute, you've 7 seconds to make a first impression. And automatically I think, do I want to be associated with you? And can you be associated with my brand? I don't think so, right?
Yeah,
you may be the most wonderful person, but I can't be standing beside you because it's going to look right.
Yeah. Especially when people come into an event looking sloppy, especially if it's like a networking event or some type of business event or even a social event. I try to, because I learned somewhere, I forget what book it was, but you always kind of have to err on, think about where you're going to. And if you think it's going to be casual, dress 1 or 2 steps above casual, but not like super formal, so that you always look, at least you're well put together and you stand out and people are attracted and magnetized to you because you look clean cut, distinguished, and you look like somebody they want to associate with.
Totally. Or it's my favorite is when you see these people that are so busy, or women. I mean, we are the worst at it. We've got a handbag that's so big, it's so overflowing. We've got a bunch of stuff in our hands. You've got a phone and your hair's a mess and you just look so chaotic. And I'm like, oh my gosh, just looking at you, you give me anxiety. Like, right? Because you don't feel like you're in a calm space, right? That you can actually I feel like I'm going to get drawn into your chaos and I don't want to, right?
Yeah.
And you just kind of go, whoa. It's amazing. Like all these things we do, we just don't think enough. And yes, of course, we're totally busy. But again, it goes back to being in that moment about what is it that we're trying to get from here? What are we trying to do? Are we trying to find and network with executives? Am I somebody that an executive would want to have a picture next to? Or am I somebody, an executive or somebody senior, would want to introduce me to their circle of friends?
True.
Right?
Yeah. And as we start to wind down the show, let's talk a little bit about the online space when it comes to networking. So connecting with people on social media, say LinkedIn, Instagram, I think Facebook, or maybe just LinkedIn, and then we might cover the other two if you want to. But when it comes to doing online networking and reaching out, especially if it's from somebody that you've never met before, how does one do that in such a way that you don't come off as pushy, but you're also coming off as someone that yes, I I will be willing to connect with you or follow you on my network, and then hopefully you don't ruin the relationship by posting stuff that is negative or distasteful.
All social platforms, it's the same thing. You've got to provide value to the person that you are trying to connect with. And this means that, maybe once in a while you like a post. Now, don't go stalkerish on them and start, retweeting everything they do or liking everything they do, because that's a little weird that you came out of the blue. But if you like something and you're like, oh, and just once or twice, and here, and then maybe next time you'll feel a bit more confident to actually add a comment to it. And then maybe next time you'll share their content. Do you know that is such a huge compliment to anyone that produces content when somebody shares? Like, I don't know about you, I get warm, tingly, spidey, whatever, because I'm like, oh my gosh, someone thought it was valuable enough to share. I look at them, right? Like, you're just so like, wow, that is so nice of you to share amongst your peers. And it makes me kind of intrigued with you a little bit more. And that's the same thing that goes for anybody, right? Like if you see a speaker on stage and you go and talk to them for a bit afterwards and you took a picture with them and later on you tweet or, put it on Instagram, wherever, and you put on what value you found from them, they are going to remember you.
Yeah.
They are going to take notice of you because you're providing value. And value doesn't have to just be about extending their brand. It could be that you see an article that you thought might be interesting to them, right? And you could start. I have developed so many relationships with people I will probably never meet face to face. Like, I think I have more social connections than anything else. Like, I always hate the ones where I get on LinkedIn of, hey, can we connect? I'd like to add you to my LinkedIn. And so I could tell you about my product.
Yes, I hate those.
Right? Delete, right? Like, don't you kind of just go,
block.
You're block. I should do that. Why would I want to? Why am I going to buy anything from someone that I don't know anything about? Like, I never understand that. And again, it goes back to all of that. And and with consulting, I keep saying that, yes, we all heard that saying, your net worth is based on all your networks, right? But the truth of the matter is, when you've delivered something, like yesterday, I got a phone call from a client of mine that had like about a year ago saying something. I know that this is so not your forte, but you're the only person I trust that can figure it all out and make magic happen. Wow. She's like, can you come in so we can sign the contract and get you started? And, holy, that's amazing, right? Like, that is the type of thing that you want. And so in social networking, when you are posting stuff, you need to always have a sense of decorum.
Yeah.
Other people are reading it. Like, don't go and be all negative on someone's post. Offer a different perspective in a positive way so you don't get seen as a negative person, but you're providing a different point of view in a very professional manner, right? People pay attention. People will be like, hey, and all of a sudden you'll find you'll have new followers based on how you've handled something. And this is really big in the social space. And it's amazing. People really want to connect with people in a social network environment more so than ever. It's because they just don't have time to travel all the way into a city and do all those things. They want to get to know you a little bit before they actually invest time in you.
Yeah. And especially I find that even influential people and celebrities and influencers, so thought leaders or people like you look up to and you admire, like take for example, I saw a quote of Keith Ferrazzi in your book. Now, he's one guy, I read his book a long time ago. I really liked it. I started following him on social media, sometimes retweet his stuff, connect with him. I was surprised to see that one day after all this, it's been many years since I first connected with him. I saw that he started following me back too on Instagram or something, and he liked one of the podcasts I released, and I'm like, oh wow, I didn't know that this guy was even seeing me,
It's amazing, right? Like, you just gotta think every time, am I providing value? If not, don't post anything. Don't do something, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no point of doing it because then you're just noise.
Very true, very true. Now, Sapna, as we start to wind down the show, I know you're coming up with a new course for management consultant, and it has to do with future proofing and getting people to prepare for the career that is fast changing in the world. So every career is fast changing, but now with AI, VR, IR, or whatever R it is, things are moving at a much rapid pace than we're used to maybe 10, 20 years ago. So could you talk a little bit about, future proofing your career and how people, maybe not just management consultants in general, but other professionals as well can think about future-proofing their careers and kind of becoming anti-fragile, like Nassim Taleb would call it.
Oh, I love that. That's a smart way of saying it. So yeah, this future-proof online course, it's actually based on management consulting best practices. So consultants, in order for us to get the big dollars that we get, is because not only do we add value, we are ahead of the curve and people want us for our expertise. Mm-hmm. So I actually teach people exactly how to stay ahead of the curve, because if you think your role is going to be automated, yeah, it's probably going to be automated. But if you're thinking it's going to get automated in 10 years after you retire, you got to think again. That the pace of change is happening we're actually at the slow end of change. We're just getting really started and ramped up, and things are moving very, very fast. Like I remember way back when I used to tell clients, oh yeah, I'll take months to do that. Then I changed my words going, yep, I'll take weeks. Next thing I knew, I said days. Next thing I knew, I said seconds. And now I say milliseconds. It's crazy because that's how fast things are moving and shaping. So I actually teaching people about how to be like management, how do you stay ahead? It doesn't mean that you have to do all these things to get the bigger paycheck, but you will get noticed and promoted inside of your companies. You will get visibility in a very different thing, and you'll get opportunities that you never saw happening before. And it's all about doing small tweaks to how you speak a certain language. You start speaking the language of the executives and start thinking a little bit more differently and really prepare yourself that it's not just a clicking in from a 9-to-5 job. Like I even did a blog post saying, I've been a virtual worker my entire career. It's unbelievable. I can work from anywhere. But I've always knew that it came with a sense of responsibility. Oh gosh, is that a Spider-Man or a Superman quote? With great power comes great responsibility. Spider-Man. Because ultimately, it's no longer about me clocking in on a laptop from 9 to 5. It's about what results did I produce?
Yes.
What ROI did my company get from me for the 40 hours that I just billed them? And it's a really different sense of responsibility and a shift in our mindset to think a little bit differently. And it's not about work-life balance. It's about work-life integration. So yes, you don't have to apologize for having a doctor's appointment in the morning, because that's okay. However, you not delivering a report or delivering a report with high quality and doing due diligence and checking so that a boss can easily send it to their boss and not understanding the stakeholders, that's not acceptable anymore.
Yeah.
And it's really different because companies really want their employees to be a lot more thinkers, a lot more innovators, because they need their employees to do it, because the company needs to be more innovative or they're going to be disrupted. So it's actually a win-win, but yet no one's teaching the employees how to be that person.
Okay. So 1 second. So is the change more on the soft side, or are you also teaching adoption of technical skills like learning to code and stuff like that?
No, soft side.
Okay.
Yeah, totally soft side. And because honestly, there's so many things you can learn from a technical, and I honestly can't code with it. Well, that's not true. I can code because now I've learned that there's all these new cheat sheets for coding. It's amazing. But it really is about your soft skills, about, again, your internal brand and how are you getting maximum exposure inside your organization and also outside.
Yeah.
You're only as good as you are deemed at marketable level.
Okay.
So if you don't have marketable skills on the outside, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
So how do you think a little bit differently, and how do you make sure, and how do you test whether or not you're marketable or not? And it's not a scary thing. It's once you understand the gaps that you have, then you can come up with a plan. And that's exactly what I also show as well. So yes, it's it's been inspired by, again, all these different people that are struggling so hard, not just they find a job, but then they get stuck that they can't get promoted, or they can't find another job that's like that, because honestly, that role barely exists anymore in those companies, right? So that's kind of where it's going.
Awesome. Well, Sapna, we've reached the end of the show. I really appreciate you coming to share your story, to tell us more about connecting the dots and your career trajectory. But before I let you go, tell us a little bit about where we can find you, connect with you, do business with you. And I know you have a little gift for the listeners of the show.
Oh, I always have little gifts. Well, first of all, you can connect with me anywhere. LinkedIn is probably the easiest place because I tend to be there quite a bit. Okay. But you can email me very easily at me@sapnamalhotra.io. I try to keep it simple. So you can find me there and obviously on the Can Innovate podcast. And honestly, for your listeners, I have a couple of great things for you guys. One is I have an optimization about how to maximize your networking efforts without doing more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you get to do less and get more results just by tweaking a few things. And, so I have that little freebie for you guys as well. And then, of course, if you got the book, I will definitely give you the companion workbook so you can actually do something work and figure out where your network is and where you're trying to go.
Okay, so where can people find the book? On Amazon and I know live, well, I say in person, in real life, Indigo Books or where?
Yeah, so it's at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, a lot of the different big players are out there. And you can find it on the website, and I can send you all the links so you can put it in the show notes.
All right, definitely we'll do that. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for coming to share your story and your words of wisdom, Sapna. I truly appreciate you taking the time to do this today.
Well, no, Chi, the honor is honestly all mine. I love talking, chatting, and honestly, I hope I provided value to your listeners. And Chi, keep doing what you're doing because you've got a brilliant podcast.
Thank you so much. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you love what you hear on today's episode of the podcast, go to iTunes and leave a review and a comment. It helps other great listeners like yourself find the show. And of course, you can always find more episodes of the Bulletproof Entrepreneur Podcast at www.odogwu.com.